The scream of the alarm shattered the silence of the diplomatic compound, cutting through the steady hum of conversation like a knife. It was the kind of alarm no one ever expected to hear, especially not in the heart of the Galactic Empire's neutral sector. The room fell into a stunned silence. It was supposed to be a peaceful mission, a simple diplomatic exchange between the United Earth Federation and the Empire. But peace had never seemed so fragile. Humanity had spent decades carefully navigating the political landscape of the galaxy, respecting the tenuous alliances forged with countless alien species, especially the Galactic Empire. Tensions were high, but Earth had kept its distance, choosing diplomacy over war, despite the occasional provocations. Now, all that would be in vain. Sitting at the center of the room, Ambassador Thomas Hayward stared at the screen in front of him, his eyes locked on the horrifying footage. His daughter, Liliana, no more than 8 years old, had been playing in the courtyard, a simple game of tag with a few other children from the embassy. She had wandered too close to the Empire's ceremonial guards, a misunderstanding that within seconds would become her death sentence. The Empire had not even offered an explanation. The footage, live-streamed across the entire Federation, showed an officer's cold command to eliminate the threat. A single shot, and the child fell, lifeless, into the dirt, her body crumpling like a broken doll. There was no remorse, no acknowledgement of the tragedy. Only the Emperor's voice issuing an order to remove the disturbance. Hayward's heart had stopped. The silence in the room was deafening. He had felt every breath of his body burn with rage, with disbelief, as he watched his daughter's life extinguished. His mind struggled to process what had just occurred. The news spread fast. Within hours, Earth's capital was in a state of frenzy. The United Earth Federation, known for its cautious approach to intergalactic relations, found itself on the edge of a precipice. The Council had met in emergency session, and every face in the room was painted with the same color: shock and disgust. The Empire's refusal to offer even an apology made one thing clear. They saw humanity as little more than a footnote in their grand scheme. And yet, as Hayward stood before the Federation's War Council, the weight of his grief was now an unspoken bond shared with every leader in the room. It was a rage that could not be suppressed, a thirst for vengeance so raw and primal that no diplomatic talks could ever heal it. The Federation had been patient with the Empire for too long. It was no longer about politics or diplomacy. This was personal. Ambassador, General Vance's voice broke through the thick air. We need to decide what happens next. This is an act of war, and the Empire has shown no remorse. War, Hayward repeated, his voice a low rasp. His hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white with the force. We've been living in peace with the Empire for decades, and they throw it all away over one child's life. Vance met his gaze, the hard glint of military resolve reflecting in his eyes. The time for peace is over. The Federation will not allow this to go unanswered. You will have your justice, Hayward. But we need to act fast before the Empire believes we're too weak to respond. The words echoed in the room. A decision had been made. Hayward stood tall, his grief now giving way to a cold, unrelenting fire. No more negotiations. No more delays. If the Empire wants war, then war they shall have. I will make sure of it. In that moment, every leader in the room understood that this would not be a war like any other. Earth would not bow to the Empire's indifference. Earth would not allow the killing of its children to go unpunished. The stakes had been set. The battle for humanity's soul had just begun. The Federation's declaration of war echoed through the halls of every major government and military office on Earth. It was swift, calculated, and unyielding. In the days following the death of Liliana Hayward, Earth's leadership had reached a unanimous decision. The time for diplomacy had ended. If the Galactic Empire would not acknowledge the gravity of their actions, then Earth would teach them through force. Within hours, every major military installation across the globe shifted into high alert. Troops mobilized, warships began loading, and Earth's entire space fleet was primed for retaliation. The gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone, least of all the people of Earth, who had long been isolated from the greater galactic conflicts. The Federation had always avoided escalation, choosing instead to use negotiation, subterfuge, and diplomacy to maintain its place in the galaxy. Now, with their backs against the wall and their hearts hardened by grief, humanity was prepared to meet the Empire with a ferocity no one could have predicted. General Vance stood at the helm of Earth's military command center, overseeing the operations with a cold, unwavering gaze. The early reports were grim. Skirmishes on the outer reaches of Federation-controlled space had already begun as Earth's fleet took to the stars. The Empire's tactical superiority was undeniable, but humanity's resolve was unmatched. Vance's strategy was clear: strike fast, hit hard, and make it personal. Prepare the Special Forces teams, Vance ordered, his voice firm and decisive. We'll send a message they won't ignore. Start with the colony worlds, where the Empire's grip is weakest. Make them feel every inch of our fury. The command came without hesitation, and soon, elite human soldiers, highly trained in both conventional warfare and psychological operations, were preparing for missions that would shake the Empire to its core. These Special Forces units were not just soldiers. They were the embodiment of Earth's rage. Their every action, a declaration that the murder of a child would not go unanswered. Back on Earth, President Isabella Kent addressed the Federation in an emergency broadcast. Her normally calm demeanor was replaced by a hard-edged resolve. To the Empire, and to every galaxy far and wide, Earth has suffered a loss we will never forget. The death of one of our own was not a mistake, it was an execution. If you believe for one moment that humanity will bend in the face of injustice, you are gravely mistaken. This is our vow. We will not rest until every one of you feels the consequences of this act. Her words were broadcast to billions across the globe and beyond, each syllable carrying the weight of a planet's anger. As she finished, the Federation's military assets across the solar system were unleashed. Entire fleets of warships moved into position, and Earth's once neutral territories became battlegrounds. In the Empire's central command, the reaction was swift, but not unexpected. The Galactic Empire had long viewed Earth's military as an insignificant force. Now, however, they were learning the hard way that Earth was not a species to be dismissed. Report from the front line, a high-ranking Imperial officer said, looking over the data from his display. Federation forces are engaging our outer colonies. They're more aggressive than anticipated, General. The officer stood rigid, his face betraying no emotion as the Empire's war machine rumbled into motion. The Empire, vast and powerful, could crush any rebellion under its boot. Or so they thought. The Emperor, seated on his throne light years away, watched as Earth's military began to make waves. He had anticipated that the Federation would retaliate, but he had not expected such resolve, such fury. Reinforcements will be sent to suppress their outbursts, the Emperor declared coldly, as though Earth's defiance was little more than an inconvenience. But we will not forget this, nor will we be intimidated by their attempts. They are nothing more than a nuisance, and their wrath will be crushed as swiftly as it was ignited. Yet, the Emperor was mistaken. Earth was not a nuisance. It was a force of nature, and the galaxy would soon learn that once humanity was provoked, there was no force more dangerous. On Earth's side, the sense of unity among the Federation was palpable. People from all walks of life, from soldiers to scientists to civilians, shared one common goal: to avenge the innocent life lost, to show the Empire that humanity would not be intimidated. It was no longer about political strategy or diplomatic talks. It was about ensuring that the memory of Liliana Hayward would live on as a symbol of humanity's unbreakable spirit. The first wave of attacks hit hard, and the Empire's colonies on the fringes of its domain were plunged into chaos. Earth's fleet didn't wait for approval. It acted on instinct, acting as though the very weight of their anger fueled every missile, every attack. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. The war had only just begun, but the taste of vengeance already burned on Earth's lips. Every strategic victory, no matter how small, sent ripples through the Empire. But humanity's greatest strength was yet to be unleashed, their unyielding ability to adapt, to innovate, to fight not just with weapons, but with the very core of their being. In the heat of battle, Earth's military leaders knew that they had something the Empire could never understand, a burning resolve to protect what they loved and a talent for turning their weaknesses into strengths. At Earth's military headquarters, General Vance and his top advisors reviewed the latest intelligence. The first wave of skirmishes had proven to be costly but effective. Humanity's special forces were making a name for themselves in the Empire's border worlds. They were not just soldiers, they were ghosts in the night, outwitting, outthinking, and outmaneuvering their more technologically advanced enemies. The Empire's reliance on brute force was a mistake, and it was a mistake that humanity intended to exploit at every turn. Report from the outer colonies. One of the officers read aloud. Federation forces are encountering light resistance. They're using guerrilla tactics, small units harassing larger Imperial ships. The Empire's fleet is ill-prepared for this kind of warfare. Vance nodded. The Empire had expected an all-out assault, the kind of military force they could crush with their superior technology. But humanity was not so predictable. Earth's strategy was simple: strike where the Empire least expected, and never give them time to recover. Keep the pressure on them, Vance ordered. We're not just fighting their military. We're fighting their perception of us. If we show them that we can win, we'll make them question their every move. Meanwhile, back on Earth, President Isabella Kent's administration was preparing for a long war. The Federation had been forced to adapt quickly, shifting its focus from diplomacy to full-scale mobilization. Earth had never been so unified. People from all walks of life, from scientists to civilians, volunteered for the war effort. But it wasn't just about putting boots on the ground. It was about using humanity's greatest weapon, their creativity. Dr. Alice Hawkins, a leading scientist at Earth's Weapons Research Division, had developed a new type of defense technology, one that could turn the tide of battle. While the Empire's ships relied on heavy armor and overwhelming firepower, Earth's new technology focused on disrupting their very systems. Hawkins and her team had developed a series of advanced EMP devices designed to target the Empire's complex power networks. One well-placed strike, and entire fleets could be rendered useless in seconds. We've created a weapon that hits them where they're weakest, Dr. Hawkins explained to the Council. The Empire's ships are highly advanced, but their reliance on energy-based systems leaves them vulnerable to targeted interference. A single EMP pulse could disable their entire fleet. The plan was set in motion. Earth's military forces would move swiftly, striking at key Imperial strongholds, while the new EMP technology was deployed from the shadows. It was a chance to show the Empire that even their most advanced technology could not protect them from humanity's ingenuity. But humanity's strategy was not just limited to technological innovation. Special forces units had been deployed to infiltrate deep into the Empire's territory. Their objective was to hit the Empire's morale, to break the illusion that they were invincible. A series of high-profile sabotage missions were planned, each designed to strike at the heart of the Empire's elite forces. The idea was simple: humiliate the Empire, show them that their power was not as absolute as they believed. As Earth's forces moved into action, the Empire began to feel the strain. The loss of key colonies, the destruction of warships, the sabotage of their military operations, it was all adding up. And as the war raged on, something began to change in the hearts and minds of the Empire's own soldiers. They had come to expect humanity to fall in line, to cower in fear, But now they were facing a different kind of opponent. In the Empire's war room, reports of the Federation's successes began to filter in. General Kane, one of the Empire's most battle-hardened officers, slammed his fist on the table in frustration. "They're fighting like they've got nothing to lose," he muttered. "How can they be so relentless? We should have crushed them by now." The Emperor, who had been silently observing the reports, leaned forward. "They're not just fighting us. They're fighting for something greater. It's their spirit. We underestimated it, and now we'll pay the price." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll have to break it." But what the Empire failed to understand was that humanity's spirit was not something that could be broken. It was a force of nature, as indomitable as the planet they called home. The longer the war dragged on, the more the Empire would learn that Earth's true strength lay not in their technology or their numbers, but in the unrelenting force of their will to survive. The Emperor's patience had worn thin. What was meant to be a simple show of power had spiraled into something far more dangerous than anticipated. The rebellion, as the Empire called it, was no longer an insignificant disturbance at the fringes of the galaxy. It was a full-scale war, one that threatened to undermine everything the Empire had built over millennia. The time for subtlety was over. If humanity wanted a war, they would have won. In the Imperial War Command, General Kane, the Emperor's most trusted military strategist, stood over a holographic map of the galaxy, his expression dark with determination. "They've grown bolder with every victory. Our fleet has been scattered across multiple sectors, trying to contain their guerrilla strikes. If we don't move now, they'll grow too powerful to stop." The Emperor, seated in his towering throne room, watched the data unfold on his display with an unsettling calm. He had long believed that humanity was too small, too weak, to challenge the vast might of the Empire. But as Earth's forces continued to wreak havoc on Imperial outposts and colonies, that belief was beginning to erode. Humanity was fighting back with something the Empire couldn't understand: rage, a kind of passion that transcended logic, a thirst for vengeance so deep it blinded them to their own limitations. The Emperor had underestimated them. "It's time to end this," the Emperor said, his voice cold and final. "Deploy the full might of the Imperial fleet. Strike Earth with everything we have." The order was sent out across the Empire's vast communication network. 1,000 warships, including the dreaded dreadnoughts and the imposing star destroyers, would converge on Earth. This would not be a surgical strike. This would be a slaughter, a display of power that would leave no doubt in the minds of any who dared to resist. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Isabella Kent received the shocking news of the Empire's counteroffensive. The sheer size and scope of the attack were enough to rattle even the most hardened military commanders. Earth's fleet was already stretched thin, having committed forces to several key battles on the Empire's colonies. But now, the Empire's juggernaut was heading straight for Earth. "This is it," General Vance muttered to his staff as he reviewed the incoming reports. "We knew this was coming, but we're not backing down." Kent stood tall in front of the War Council, her face etched with determination. "We've fought them to a standstill, but this is different. They'll come with everything they have. We've got one shot at this. If we don't stop them here, it's over." The mood in the room was tense, but there was no fear. Instead, a quiet resolve had settled over the Federation's leadership. Earth had already taken the first blows, but they had shown that they would not be cowed. Their victories had been hard-won, but they had come at a price. Now, the real test was coming. "Deploy the full fleet," Vance ordered. "I don't care if we have to fight in every sector of this solar system. Earth will stand. We will not fall to them." The Federation's military was quick to respond. Earth's ships moved into defensive formations, but they were outgunned, outnumbered. The Empire's fleet was larger, better equipped, and more experienced in large-scale warfare. Still, Earth's forces had one advantage the Empire had yet to reckon with: the human spirit. As the Imperial fleet descended upon Earth, the skies darkened with the shadows of warships. The first wave of attacks hit Earth's orbital defense stations. Energy blasts surged through space, targeting key satellite grids and spaceports. Yet even in the face of overwhelming firepower, Earth's defenses held their ground longer than anticipated. For every station lost, two more took its place, bought precious time for the Federation's counterattack. The Empire had not anticipated the ferocity of Earth's response. The initial bombardment was brutal, with entire sectors of Earth's orbit being decimated. Cities on the surface were evacuated, and the Federation's civilian leadership moved into underground bunkers. But while the Empire's firepower was devastating, it was also impersonal. The destruction was cold, clinical, but it failed to break the Federation's resolve. In the heat of the battle, the true strength of Earth's military emerged. Special forces units were dispatched to engage Imperial soldiers on the ground, conducting operations with the kind of precision and ferocity the Empire had never encountered before. Guerrilla tactics, familiar to humanity, now became their greatest weapon. Earth's soldiers fought not just for survival, but for revenge. The loss of every city, every life, only fueled their resolve to push back harder. As the battle raged on in Earth's orbit, President Kent addressed the Federation. "We will not bow. We will not break. This is our planet, our home, and we will fight for it to the last breath." Her words resonated with every soldier, every civilian, and every officer who stood against the Empire's might. The war had shifted from a battle for survival into a battle for Earth's very identity. And as the Imperial fleet loomed over Earth's surface, humanity had proven that they would never surrender. But as the clock ticked down to the final confrontation, the Emperor's fleet began to converge. Earth had not yet fully understood the scale of what was coming. And in the heart of the Empire, the Emperor was preparing his own final play. The war had reached a breaking point. The Empire's fleet had laid waste to vast stretches of Earth's orbital defense, and the war on the ground had become a desperate, brutal fight for survival. Humanity, though battered and broken, had never shown more resolve. The losses had been catastrophic, but with every blow the Empire struck, humanity struck back with something the Empire could never anticipate: unrelenting fury. In the heart of Earth's military command, General Vance paced, his mind racing. The latest Imperial offensive had decimated much of Earth's outer defenses, and the Empire was now preparing to make its final push. But as the Federation's forces regrouped, there was no question that Earth would not go down without a fight. "This is it," Vance muttered to his staff as he looked at the star map in front of him. "They've thrown everything they have at us, and we're still standing. It's time to turn the tide." The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. The Federation's fleet was small in comparison to the might of the Empire's vast war machine, but humanity's strength had never been in its numbers. It was in its resolve, in its capacity to adapt, to outthink, and to fight even when the odds were stacked against them. Vance's next words came with a heavy weight. "We're not just going to defend anymore. It's time we bring the war to them." With that, the plan was set in motion. Earth's remaining fleet, battered but unbroken, would launch a counteroffensive on the Empire's most vulnerable sector, their supply chains. By hitting the Empire where it hurt the most, Earth could stall the invasion and buy the Federation enough time to regroup. It wasn't a plan without risks, but it was the only chance left. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, President Isabella Kent addressed the people, her words resonating through every broadcast channel. "We have fought for our survival. We have fought for our right to exist in a galaxy that once believed we were too small, too insignificant to matter. But now, Earth will show the Empire that we are not to be underestimated. We will fight for every inch of our planet, and we will not stop until we have secured our future." Her words spread like wildfire, igniting a sense of unity among humanity. The war had already taken everything from them: families, cities, loved ones. But they would not let it take their future. The Federation, now more unified than ever, launched its boldest strikes yet. Earth's special forces, already seasoned in hit-and-run tactics, moved deep into the heart of Imperial territory. Their mission was simple: sabotage. They infiltrated Imperial command centers, disabled key communication networks, and left a trail of destruction in their wake. With each successful mission, the Empire's iron grip on their colonies weakened. What had once seemed like a mighty fortress was now starting to crack. As Earth's forces pushed forward, the Empire found itself scrambling. Their supply lines were severed, their fleets stretched thin, and their morale began to erode. In a move that shocked even General Kane, the Empire's most experienced officer, Earth's soldiers had done the impossible. They had turned the tide. The battle on Earth's surface was no less brutal. Major cities had become war zones, with the Empire's ground troops fighting tooth and nail to hold their positions. The destruction was overwhelming, but humanity's spirit remained unbroken. Ordinary citizens, civilians who had never held a weapon before, picked up rifles and fought alongside the military, defending their homes with the same ferocity as the trained soldiers. In the midst of the chaos, Earth's new weapon was deployed, a devastating EMP pulse capable of disabling Imperial warships within a matter of seconds. It was a last-ditch effort, but one that could give humanity a fighting chance. The first strike came just as the Empire was preparing to launch its final assault on Earth's remaining military command centers. As the EMP pulse rippled across the stars, hundreds of Imperial ships dropped out of formation, their systems shut down by the force of the electromagnetic blast. The Empire's massive war fleet, once considered an unstoppable force, was brought to its knees. It was a moment of triumph. Earth had done what no one thought possible. The Federation, now re-energized and emboldened, pressed the attack. As the Empire's fleet struggled to recover, Earth's forces surged forward, hammering at their weakened defenses. The message was clear: humanity had not just fought back. They had become a force to be reckoned with. Back in the Empire's capital, the Emperor seethed. How? How could they have done this? His rage was palpable. The Empire had been brought to the brink of defeat by a species they had once dismissed as insignificant. Humanity, it seemed, was not as easy to crush as they had hoped. But even in the face of overwhelming defeat, the Emperor was not one to back down. He knew that the war was far from over. If they want to fight, he muttered, then let them feel the full force of the Empire. We will not be beaten by these creatures. Yet, as the Empire readied itself for another assault, it was clear that Earth had crossed a threshold. No longer would they be content to survive, they would fight to win. And with every victory, humanity grew stronger, their resolve hardened by the very wrath the Empire had sought to crush. The war, it seemed, was only just beginning. The once peaceful blue planet was now a war-torn landscape, scarred by the brutality of conflict. Earth's cities lay in ruins, its skies filled with the burning wreckage of space battles. But through the ashes of destruction, humanity had found a strength that the Empire could not comprehend. They had fought back, clawed their way through impossible odds, and now stood on the precipice of their greatest challenge, the final confrontation with the Galactic Empire. The Emperor, infuriated by Earth's resilience, had unleashed his last, most powerful weapon, a massive fleet that would obliterate humanity once and for all. But Earth's forces had not folded under the weight of this new threat. Instead, they had hardened, their will stronger than ever. The Federation's command was in chaos, but there was no turning back now. In Earth's command center, General Vance stood over the tactical display, his face drawn but resolute. This is it. We've pushed them back every time they've come at us, but now they've come with everything. We can't afford to fail. President Isabella Kent, who had been in constant communication with military leaders, knew that Earth's survival rested on the next few hours. We'll have to be smarter than they are. The Empire's fleet is too large, too powerful. But they're arrogant, and they've underestimated us for too long. We need to turn their overconfidence into their downfall. Vance nodded. Our best chance is to target their command ships. If we can take down their leadership, the rest of their fleet will crumble. The plan was set. Earth's remaining ships, battered from previous engagements, would strike the Empire's flagship, a behemoth that commanded the entirety of their forces. It was a suicide mission, but it was humanity's last shot at ending the war on their terms. As the final battle began, the Federation's remaining fleet took to the stars, their ships moving with the precision of soldiers who knew what was at stake. The Empire's fleet was waiting, their vessels arrayed in tight formations, preparing to crush any resistance that came their way. The battle was a symphony of destruction. Energy blasts cutting through the vacuum of space, warships colliding with the force of an unforgiving storm. The Empire, overconfident in their victory, had made a critical misstep. In their pursuit of Earth's remaining forces, they had left their flagship vulnerable. It was a gap that Earth's special forces exploited with ruthless precision. Small fighter squadrons slipped past Imperial lines, delivering a crippling strike on the flagship's power grid. Explosions rocked the ship, sending shockwaves through the Imperial fleet. With their flagship crippled, the Empire's entire command structure began to unravel. The fleet, once a coordinated force of destruction, was now a disorganized mass of confused and desperate warships. The tides of the battle shifted in Earth's favor. On the ground, the last stand for humanity was underway. The Empire's forces, now scattered and disoriented, attempted to hold their ground in the last remaining cities of Earth. Human soldiers, once driven solely by survival, were now driven by something far greater: revenge. Every building, every street became a battleground, but Earth's fighters were no longer just defending their homes. They were fighting for their future, for the memory of the lives that had been lost, for the promise that their children would grow up free from the shadow of imperial tyranny. In the heart of the final conflict, President Kent's voice resonated through every Federation channel. For every life lost, for every sacrifice made, we fight for one thing: our future. We will not fall. Earth will not bow to the Empire. Her words echoed through the hearts of every soldier, every civilian, and every fighter who stood against the Empire. The final push began. Earth's forces rallied one last time, pouring everything they had into the heart of the Empire's broken forces. In space, the flagship, now a smoldering wreck, was finally brought to its knees. Earth's fighters, battered and bruised but unbroken, turned their sights to the remaining Imperial ships. With their leadership shattered, the Empire had no chance to regroup. One by one, the remaining warships fell, their power flickering out in the void of space. The Emperor, watching from his citadel of power, could do nothing but watch as his empire crumbled. He had underestimated humanity, and now, in the ashes of his great empire, he realized too late that there was no force in the galaxy that could defeat the indomitable spirit of Earth. Humanity had won. The final stand had become the final victory. As the last Imperial warships fell, Earth's forces gathered, victorious, but forever changed by the cost of the war. The galaxy had learned one inescapable truth: never underestimate humanity. Because when pushed to the brink, humanity would not just survive, they would rise, and they would conquer.